Hello. I wanted to just take a few minutes to give some speculation on the current trajectory of the economy in the post-pandemic era and try to talk a little bit about the history of how we have wound up with the sort of economy that we do have here in Canada and the United States and much of the Western countries as well. And again, just try to speculate about how the pandemic is going to impact that. Excuse me. So after in the second half of the 20th century, really starting with the end of the Second World War, there is that is the period, the golden age of state capitalism, where from the 50s to the 70s in particular, you had a huge amount of industrialization in the Western countries, the high GDP, central nations of the global economy, like the United States, Canada, much of Europe, the UK. You had a big investment in manufacturing, but then as the decades wore on and the global economy became more and more globalized, and all of these different nations, their economies became more and more inextricably bound up in each other, beginning at the end of that period in the late 70s going into the 80s and 90s, you had the the manufacturing that provided for this golden age, so-called, of state capitalism in the West. It moved through the process of labor innovation, technological innovation. It moved from those countries and became relegated to the low GDP countries, the peripheries, the global South, Africa, South America, especially China. It used to be Mexico produced so much of these consumer goods, and now China has really taken that over. But following that move, there was and the attendant loss of jobs in the Western countries in manufacturing. There were new technological domains opened up through the same processes that caused those jobs to move away. So the microchips industry, and especially in the 90s, taking off in the 90s, the software industry and the online economy, the whole dot-com bubble, that was able to take up some of the jobs that were lost through the process of moving manufacturing to other countries. And obviously eventually that bubble burst and the economy moves on further. Where are the jobs going to go now? Where are the jobs going to come from now? If there's no manufacturing in these countries, there's no... the software is still, to some extent, a big industry here. It's, taking off, I guess, but at the same time it's getting more and more automated. But these economies, these high GDP central economies for the global market, they really move towards service industries, and that is where most of the job creation occurred in service, which is can be taken in many different ways. You have restaurant service, you have hotel cleaners, you have people who clean the streets. Service is a very wide category. It's generally understood to be a non-productive labor. You're not really producing anything. You're really just servicing, maintaining, doing giving the PMC class something to make them feel like they are actually in a separate social class, rather than in fact they're in the same economic class, and therefore they don't really have any social distinction from the working class. So you have all of these service jobs created, and these high GDP countries, again, Canada, United States, Europe, etc., all of their economies became highly focused around that type of industry, if you can even really call service an industry. But now you have a pandemic which has completely undercut tourism, which has completely made it impossible for these same types of sectors to really provide a service. There are no more services really. The only real service that you have is delivery service. That's what service was in serve of the PMC and obviously working class people who wanted to occasionally go out and get some treatment, do some tourism, get a nice service done on them, get their nails done, go to a nice restaurant, whatever. But really, it was the service industry was based around the PMC class, which are the managers, the people who are not really capitalists, but they're slightly different from working class. They don't necessarily own property, but they have an intermediary kind of function where their jobs are not the ones that are immediately being automated away, which are not being immediately lost due to the collapsing service industry. So what we have seen now in the context of the pandemic is just that, is complete collapse of the service industry, and you have completely unprecedented amounts of people who are now unemployed in all of these high GDP countries, United States, Canada, Europe, and it's completely contingent on whether or not their jobs will ever come back. It's completely there's no guarantee whatsoever that those jobs will ever come back, and if they do, it's going to be years from now. Society should not allow those jobs to come back before at least 1 year, possibly 2 years have elapsed. Otherwise, it's just going to be furthering the spread of the virus. We need a more widespread and long-term social lockdown in order to really be able to deal with this virus effectively and to stop people dying in the streets. But there are all these people out of work who, in the United States, the situation is truly dire. I can't even imagine living in that country where unemployment has come to an end. Unemployment insurance is over, as far as I know, in a lot of states. You have no the eviction moratorium is over. What is coming down the pike in the United States? Fucking horrendous, and obviously it's no wonder that people are in the streets rioting for some kind of change. But it's just and I'm here in Canada, and we are very fortunate here. The state is a failed state in many ways, and it's a truly barbaric state in many ways. But I am just so grateful when I read the news about what is happening in the United States. I'm incredibly grateful that we have our welfare state. The welfare services that the government provides to its people are by no means robust or beyond criticism, but they're certainly better than what Americans are being offered, and to some extent they are enough to live on. So as a service worker, it is a bit frightening, it's a bit dreadful for me to think of what is going to happen with the economy. These jobs are all gone in the service industry, they're not going to be back for years. Who knows if they will ever be back, if people will ever want to go to a restaurant again. So where are the jobs going to come from now? Manufacturing has moved away. Service has disappeared. So there's really no job there for people, and obviously the market, the economy needs to supply people with jobs, otherwise it cannot reproduce itself. It cannot reproduce the relationship between the capitalist and the worker unless there are workers who unless there's like some promise of a job for the workers. So yeah, that's just an interesting thing to think about. I have not really gotten around to, sorry that I cannot offer you a more promising or like positive outlook, like an upshot to this. I think the upshot is, what's happening in Portland, and like as much as I am grateful to be not in the United States, and as much as I would like hate to be there, like I'm glad that somebody is doing the hard work of getting out there and militating for the change that needs to come. But I have been reading this book called Endnotes #2. The subtitle is Misery in the Value Form. Really great essay in here called Misery and Debt, is where I got a lot of these ideas, just like it goes over like the historical like trajectory of the 20th century and how all of those jobs like just shifted around from one country to the next until we eventually ended up with economy that is based largely around service. This book came out in 2010, so it's not obviously responding to pandemic, but it also it goes into a lot more depth into like capitalism itself and the contradictions that are driving this whole movement and like shuffling of the chairs, shuffling of the deck, the movement of industries from just one nation to another until they no longer exist, really. And like the essay goes into a lot more detail on like why that happens, what are the internal functions of the capitalist economy that cause that to happen, like how technology plays into that, how like innovation plays into it, and then ultimately how it relates to the question of the class relationship that underpins the whole capitalist economy. And I have a podcast coming out on that pretty soon. It's already recorded. We're just recording like an introduction, and we're going to be going through this book from the beginning to the end. We started with the second essay, but then decided to just do the whole thing. So we're going to be recording the first episode soon this week, and should have that podcast should start dropping like later on in this week. It's a buddy of mine, and like talking about how the ideas in the essay like relate to our contemporary society, the contemporary situation, and then also just like going into depth, like doing like a close reading of the actual text and like summarizing it, analyzing it, like kind of like building on it, connecting it to other things. So that should be coming out soon. Look forward to that, and we'll see you in the next video.